as soon as I started doing this tier list, I know what my fate lies. So it's fine. It's fine. So the time has come for me to finally do a tier list that my community has been begging me to do. Not this one specifically, but we looked for one, and this is the only thing I can think of at this moment in time. Maybe there will be more tier lists. We don't know yet. But I have here a Final Fantasy tier list. I do love me some Final Fantasy, but not all Final Fantasies are created equal. So we're gonna start off with the ones that I never beat. I have tried them, but I never beat them. And I know as soon as I drop these in here, people will be like, well, you can't really do a tier list because you haven't beaten the top tierest of the top tierest. So anyways, I've never beat 12 because I keep starting it and I can't finish it. I can't finish it. I never beat Real 2 and I never beat Real 3. I beat 1. It was like the first one that we do. So it's just the one that started it all. It's still, you know, it's not like a C. It's kind of a C. It's kind of okay. It's not terrible. Oh, I never beat 5. I never had a chance to play 5 because these came out on the 3DS or the DS. And I never went back to beat them on Pixel Remastered. So that may be a to-do list. But I probably will never get to 12. Because I keep trying. And just no. I just can't. Oh, I never played 11 because I was not a fan of MMOs. We'll get to that. I already know people will be very upset at me about one of my choices, but it's fine. I'm going to go ahead and say Final Fantasy IV is definitely... It's like an in-between an S and an A for me, but I'm gonna put it at A. Cecil was one of my first pixelated husbandos, so I very much love him. Very, very much, very, very truly. Final Fantasy VI. It's top tier. Sorry. It's the best. It's the best of the best. It's the best of the best. I love it. I love that every character has a moment. I love that every character has a purpose. I just love it. Locke is the best boy. I know a lot of people probably don't like Locke. And by a lot of people, I know my best friend doesn't like Locke. But just amazing. Amazing game. Never played it. Pixel remasters are everywhere. Definitely play it. 7. Original 7 first. Original 7 is definitely S tier for me. Not SSS plus tier, but S tier. That is because... I think FF7R, including Rebirth, for my opinion, is only an SSS plus tier because the original 7 exists. I think if the original 7 didn't exist, then 7R would not be higher. Because 7R definitely elevates the elements of the original 7 to the point that you remember how much you love the original 7. And as much as a lot of people don't realize or don't even think about it, is that Final Fantasy VII in itself is kind of like a Kingdom Hearts situation where they have all of these different side pieces to get the whole story. They have books, they have movies, they have so many different things. And so one of the things that I feel that Rebirth and Remake is doing is combining all of it. I know the endings of Remake and Rebirth aren't fully agreed upon, but I personally am going to wait for part 3 to come out before I completely give my truest of true rankings of Final Fantasy VII R. But as of right now, with the story not finished, 7R, Remake and Rebirth are SSS plus because Final Fantasy VII exists. I know that may be weird to some people, but I just love what they're doing so far, even if the endings are confused to a lot of people. All right. This is where things get weird and people will judge me, but I don't care. My opinion is my own and my opinion is mine. Get up there! I love Final Fantasy Fantasy VIII, and you can't take it away from me. I don't care how bad the junction system was. I don't care if the story gets all wild and crazy. I played this game when I was a little teenage girl, so it stuck with me, and there was love, and there was romance, and Squall is the best. Renault is okay, and Renault is only cool because Squall exists. I know I have this thing where like there's a lot of people that because one person exists, because the other thing exists, you leave me alone. I have Squall's necklace hanging on my computer. It's always about the time you played the game will determine on where they are in your ranking. I know 8, a lot of people don't like 8, but I will protect 8 with my whole heart. Dag nabbit. So 9 is a B. I am so sorry. I know everybody loves Final Fantasy IX. I remember buying this game when it first came out and getting all the way to the end and dropping it because it just wasn't it for me. And then I replayed it recently and I beat it. Besides Vivi, the sweet precious angel that little Vivi is the best of the best of the best. Every time someone asked me, so do you like 9? I was like, yeah, it was a game. And the only parts that really stuck with me was everything that happened with Vivi. I played this game when it came out. And so it was when they all started experimenting in the PS1 era. And then they went to the PS2 era, where it's just like, I wasn't feeling the art style at that time in the past. I'm a little bit over my art style thing. I still don't like bobbleheads. But it's just, there was something about 9 that just doesn't resonate with me as much as it does with most people. And that's okay, because I have 8 at S tier. So obviously, if you love 9 and you hate 8, our opinions don't match. And that is okay. But yeah, I replayed it, and then it's just, to me, it just definitely was forgetful. There's nothing besides Vivi that literally just like stuck to the point where I was like, I must play this game all the time. It's just, I tried it once when it first came out, and I finally beat it later, and it's not my favorite. And it do be like that sometime. But you know what is my favorite? This god tier of a game right here, Final Fantasy X. I didn't own a PlayStation 2 when Final Fantasy X came out, so I had to borrow my neighbors at the time, because I bought the game and I borrowed my neighbors. I got all the way to Mount Gagazet, that fight, and they deleted my memory card save. I never went back until a few years ago where I beat it on stream. And I'm so glad that I went back, because Final Fantasy X is an absolutely amazing game with an amazing story, an amazing character, an amazing romance. It's like what as someone that has Final Fantasy VIII on my tier list as S, because at the time I played it as a teenage girl who loved emo boys. Final Fantasy X is what 8 should have been when it comes to like that romance love thing. But it also had a really interesting story from start to finish, except Blitzball. I don't like Blitzball. 10 is just absolutely fantastic. 13 to me is 13 is a B. I think 13 is also a B. I was definitely hovering over C. I was hovering over it, but I think 13 was a solid game with a major issue. People complain about the linear aspect of Final Fantasy 13, but they're coming off of 10, which is also very linear. 10 had a lot of rails, just like 13. The issue with 13 is the fact that you get all the way to chapter 11, and chapter 11 ends up being an entirely new game where you didn't have the capability to like level up easily until you got to that open world section of that linear thing. So Final Fantasy 13 has a lot of pacing issues, and it had the qualities of best husbando, the fittings of them. Snow would have been the best husbando ever on the planet, but every 5 seconds he was crying about his girlfriend. That being said, I would not have been able to beat the game without him, because he was a fantastic combat person, which leads to the fact that there's a lot of things that happen in Final Fantasy 13 combat wise that translates to Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. So you appreciate what 13 did, because it definitely set the mold to what's going with Final Fantasy VII R. And yeah, it wasn't a bad game. I don't understand the linear complaints because Final Fantasy X was also pretty linear. So I just think they were just nitpicking at it. So I don't think it's as harsh as it is. I don't know if it's the same tier as 9, but I don't think 9 for me personally is an A, and 13 isn't an A, but it's also, those aren't C's. So it's kind of hard. I know everyone's gonna hate my tier list. As soon as I drop the bomb with Final Fantasy 9, everyone just removed themselves from my stream or from my YouTube video. Final Fantasy 14. If you were to ask me to rank Final Fantasy 14 during Shadowbringers, it would have been SSS tier. But now that I have completed Dawn Trail, I'm gonna go ahead and put it red A. There are things that I am optimistic about when it comes to the story of Final Fantasy 14. But I feel like the story right now is doing a lot of the same song and dances, and there's got to be something. There's got to be something major that happens. There just has to be something. It's never a new story, so it's kind of hard to rank them. But of course, I love the fact that Final Fantasy 14 is a love letter to all of these Final Fantasies. But yeah, Endwalker was basically Final Fantasy 4, and so there needs to be bigger consequences in 14. So if you would have asked me during Shadowbringers, it would have been higher. But after doing Dawn Trail and Endwalker, it dropped down to A. 15, A. It's not much of an S because the open world aspect of Final Fantasy 15 is not there. It's not there. The saving grace of 15 are those boys. The boys. I love the boys so much. And not only that, Final Fantasy 15 gave us one of the best antagonists in a Final Fantasy since Final Fantasy VI. I'm not gonna say it just in case no one beat 15, so I'm not gonna say who it is. But the villain in Final Fantasy 15 is my all-time favorite Final Fantasy villain next to Kefka. I think just playing and having the relationships of Noctis and the boys and everything, there are definitely complaints that I have with the 15 story. Like, I really wish we would have had some more time with certain characters that are intertwined with each other. But yeah, I think 15 was definitely a solid game. It was just a big, solid, awesome game. The Royal Edition definitely is way better play than the launch edition. I did both. I did launch and I did Royal. If you ever do play this game, play the Royal Edition because it adds some of the pieces from the movie that they force you to watch. That's the other thing that I don't like about 15 launch, was that they force you to like watch the movies or watch the anime to like get all the backstory before the game came out. And I'm a true believer of all the information that you should know about the game should be in the game and not outside of it. Like, you shouldn't have to go outside researching for stuff to get the full story. So Royal Edition does fix that a bit. But at the end of the day, it is very hollow when it comes to the open world, which is why a lot of people were worried about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth open world because of the emptiness of Final Fantasy 15. But I love those boys. The combat was fun, and the villain was absolutely fantastic. And Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16, if you would have asked me when I first beat it, it would have been up there, rising to the skies. But the more I sat with it, the more it belongs down here. I think the first half of Final Fantasy 16 is absolutely fantastic. And then it kept going. I love the characters in Final Fantasy 16, but it got to the point where your main protagonist also sounded bored doing side quest. So that felt weird to me. Like, I felt like we should have been interested in doing side quests, but then whenever you accepted a side quest and Clive was like, oh, I gotta go do this again. Like, oh, well, you think I want to do it? Like, what do you mean? I'm doing this because I want to get to know you more. Now you're just being a grumpy bus. I love how the ending panned out. I did cry. I'm not gonna deny that. But the more that I sat with it, I just wish the latter half of the game was tightened up. But that being said, it also has one of the greatest SIDs that was ever made. Next to Final Fantasy VII SID, the greatest, man. Basically, the ones that I put at B, they're not like necessarily Bs, right? They're more like, it's hard for me to want to boot these games back up. Like, I'll replay it, maybe. I think that's probably what it is. More of like A, B, C, D, or maybe I'll replay it. It's hard for me to reboot 16, 9, and 13 back up. And that's why they're lower. They're not, I don't think any Final Fantasy is remotely bad at the end of the day. I think they're all solid games, and it all, at the end of the day, is preference. But the reason why 16, 9, and 13 are lower than the rest of these, because it's hard to convince me to want to boot it back up. And I think the reason why it's hard for me to boot up 16 is because it was just so I'm going to be sad and cry and angry and sad and cry. And so I beat 16 right before playing Rebirth. And so Rebirth also has heavy tones to it. But 16 never had a lighthearted takeaway from it. And so it's like, you had your silly stuff happening in Final Fantasy VII to balance out the horrific things that happened in Final Fantasy VII. But 16, it was just like, I'm sad! And then I'm sad again! And then sad! So it's like, you never really had that lighthearted stuff. And I did all side quests. I did everything in that game. So it's not like a thing where it's like, oh, maybe you didn't do, no, I did everything. But yeah, I think that's just what it is. I was like, the Bs are just more like, I just can't seem to like want to boot this up again. But I will, because I love Final Fantasy. But at the end of the day, they're not my go-to. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna boot it up. But yeah, maybe eventually I'll get to 12 and 2 and 3 and 5. 11 I won't. The closest thing I'll get to 11 is doing the Alliance raids in Final Fantasy 14. But yeah, that is my tier list that everyone's gonna hate me for. I already understand. I know my feelings for 9, and as soon as I started doing this tier list, I know what my fate lies. So it's fine. It's fine. It'll all be fine.